This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833, extension 202. The notice of non-discrimination rights and protections to beneficiaries with regard to the federal Title VI/non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is posted in this meeting room and is available on the Old Colony Planning Council website. Please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833, and that would be at extension 202 for more information. And thank you. And I'd like to call to order the meeting and thank everyone. Bill, will you be just calling on each town and we'll just say whether we're here? Okay.
Yep, I'll do the roll call. So if you're going to call on your town or your agency and you're representing, please introduce yourself. So Abington, I know we have a couple.
John Stone, DPW Director.
I know
John Howard from Town of Hanson.
Okay, and I know we have Bruce, alternate from Abington as well. So, so Avon.
Christine Quinn, Avon.
Thank you, Christine. Welcome.
Thank you.
Bridgewater. Nope. Brockton. Nope. Okay. Duxbury. Nope. Okay. Easton.
Greg Swan, Town of Easton.
Thanks, Greg. East Bridgewater. Okay. Halifax. No. Hanover. No. Hanson. I know I saw Deborah on there.
Yeah, Deborah Petty, delegate.
Thank you. Kingston. No. Pembroke. No. Anyone from Plymouth? Okay. Plimpton. Stoughton. I know we have a couple.
Coast Guardian Planning Board.
John Charbonneau, Town Planner.
Okay, thanks, guys. West Bridgewater. No. And obviously we got Whitman. So
Dan Salvucci, alternate.
Noreen O'Toole.
thank you. Anyone from MassDOT Planning? Okay. MassDOT District 5.
Good morning, everybody. Barbara LaChance.
Good morning. Thank you. Brockton Area Transit.
Lambert here.
Okay. And anyone from Federal Highway or Federal Transit? Okay. And we have staff from Old Colony Planning Council. I'm Bill McNulty. We have other staff on here as well. Okay. So I hand it back to you, Noreen. I think you can go into public comments.
Thank you so much, Bill. Item number 2 is public comments. Do we have any public comments at this time? Hearing none, I'm going to move on to item 3, which would be the minutes of January 7th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to accept Dan Salvucci, Whitman.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item number 4, which is communications, that would be Sean.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. There are a few items in the communications packet. The first is a South Coast Rail virtual meeting for Taunton. It'll be held tonight, February 4th from 6 to 7:30. Anybody is available to attend. Please follow the link in this description to register for the call. The next item is a culvert replacement municipal assistance grant program announcements. The Division of Ecological Restoration, as well as Department of Fish and Game, is seeking proposals from Massachusetts municipalities interested in replacing an undersized, perched, or degraded culvert. Total funding available for all projects for fiscal year 22 is anticipated to be between 750,000 and 1.5 million. For more information, please click on the link in this item. And then I believe there is one more. The Department of Housing and Community Development issues preliminary guidance for MBTA communities under the Partnerships for Growth Act. These districts must meet the listed criteria here. And for more information, don't believe there's a link, but it can be found on I believe it can be found on their website.
Any questions for Sean? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna move forward to item 5, which is reports. And I'm wondering if there's a bat report today?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing too overwhelming, but most importantly, our workforce is at the moment 100% healthy. We have a couple of people out as close contacts, but it's still a remarkable status and achievement for our frontline workers that's allowing us to continue to provide a full slate of service to Brockton and surrounding communities. Ridership continues to hover around the 50% mark versus last year at this time. We're hoping that as the vaccine rolls out and as reopening starts to take place in both Brockton, Boston, and surrounding communities, that our ridership correspondingly grows. Other updates are planning related in this case. We are close to being able to release our comprehensive regional transit plan for public comment. And of course, that will be distributed to this group as well. And similarly, 2 documents that we're working on with Old Colony Planning Council, our ridership report and a Brockton Taunton study, are also nearing completion and will be provided to this group as well.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions? I'm hearing some background noise. I don't know who it's from, but could you put your mute button on? Because whatever's going on, we can all hear it. Thank you. I'm going to move on to item 5B, which is GATRA, and that would be Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some updates from our other operating authority in our region. GATRA currently is experiencing low ridership like all transit authorities across the country due to the COVID pandemic and the limited number of trips that they are servicing due to social distancing guidelines. Some bright spots though is the micro transit service that they are operating in South Plymouth is very successful, and they're very happy about that, to the point that once they start seeing the vaccine roll out, they're expecting ridership in that particular service to start climbing even further, because they're experiencing good ridership as it is right now. And this is has them thinking that they want to expand such service in the Pembroke area. So that's something they're looking in currently, about bringing micro transit to that part of their service area in our region. So it's really good news, especially during such times where ridership is low, to have such a success story in regards to public transit service.
I have to unmute myself. Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Paul? I'm going to move on to item C, which is South Coast Rail Project, and that would be Paul again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, South Coast Rail continues to move forward with the majority of the work south of our region. Currently, there is a number of construction projects and tree clearing going on along the row on the way to the new Fall River, New Bedford area. Currently, they're grading for stations in the Taunton area and other points south in anticipation of rail station construction. There have been some issues with noise increasing due to CSX traffic and tree clearing. The clearing of trees has obviously reduced the acoustic deadening features of the trees. And then CSX operating outside, I guess, of their standard operating procedures and agreements has contributed to a lot of household noise and stuff like that in points south of us. So that's what's going on in regards to South Coast Rail construction. As my colleagues, Sean Bailey had pointed out earlier, there is a meeting tonight in regards updates on South Coast Rail.
Thank
you,
you,
Madam Chair.
Paul. Any questions on the South Coast Rail? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna move on to item 6, which is old business. The FFY 2021 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program implementation, and that would be Charlie.
Charlie, you muted.
So thank you, Madam Chair. So on your screen, you can see 2 projects highlighted in yellow. The first is, they're both good news. The Harrison Boulevard at Pond Street and Bodwell Street intersection improvements project was advertised for construction bids by MassDOT on January 30th, and the bid opening is scheduled for March 2nd. So that's good news. And pleased to report the Easton Depot Street project. The bids were opened back on January 12th, and the low bidder was RJV Construction Company of Canton, Mass. And so we have 2 of the 3 projects in the Federal 21 element of the TIP that have been advertised. The 3rd project yet to be advertised, but we've heard from MassDOT that it's certainly on track to make advertisement in the federal fiscal year. It's the improvement project at Richard Wilkins Elementary School. It's a Safe Routes to School project, and it includes improvements along Central Street. And it's our understanding that this project's on track to be advertised late in May 2021. And then it should be on the last page of this. Note that in Stoughton, they had brought a project forward to the MassDOT project initiation process, and MassDOT brought it to the project review committee back in late January. And the intersection improvements at Canton School and Summer Street was approved by the project review committee. And you can see here the project ID number of 611981. So that's been approved into the design process for the TIP. So several projects moving ahead. So all good news to report.
Good.
Excuse me. Questions for Charlie? Hearing none, I'm going to move forward to 7, new business. Excuse me, the active transportation study, project status and update, and that would be Paul.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Just an update on the active transportation study that is currently in process. We are right now reaching out to the communities to understand where they are in their bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. It's been a few years since we last did our bicycle and pedestrian plan, which we're now calling the active transportation study. So things have been constructed and projects have been completed or are in the process of being completed or drafted. And so we're contacting communities at this point to understand what bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure they have put in place since the last report was completed. Are there any future plans going forward that they're working on right now so that we may understand them and put them into the plan and identify them as potential future bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And for example, just recently we had a talk with the town of Stoughton, and we were discussing with their town GIS manager about all the new bicycle sharrows and other shared use paths that are being constructed in town, and other work they are doing on Route 138 in regards to better bicycle and pedestrian accommodation, so that we can put that in the section of Stoughton in regards to the plan, and then also update all the mapping to reflect that new bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and also looking at the region beyond our region and how we might link all those up to outside our region bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects. So that's where the plan is currently. So for those communities on, you'll be hearing from me via email, and I look forward to talking with you virtually to know more about how your bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is going. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Opening this up for questions. Anyone have any questions of Paul on the active transportation study? All righty, hearing none, I'm going to move on to 7B, which is the climate change and vulnerability transportation assessment, which would be a project status and update, and that would be Ray. Hi, Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to try to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint. I do have a lot of slides. I'm going to try to go through them quickly. I can get this going. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to try to show the study. I'm going to go over what climate change is briefly. I'm going to talk about the federal response to climate change, the state response, and then I'm going to discuss what OCPC's response has been to climate change, as well as some of our towns through the MVP process, what their response to climate change has been. The study purpose of our study is to identify the impacts of climate change on our transportation system within our region, to assess the vulnerability of the infrastructure, develop some strategies to deal with climate change, and to coordinate with federal and state directives and initiatives. So we're building on some previous studies that OCPC has done before. In 2011, we did a climate change roadway drainage and runoff study. And in 2010, we also did a climate change transportation impact study. And the hazard mitigation and municipal vulnerability preparedness program, there have been 15 of OCPC's municipalities that have participated in this and done their own planning process to deal with climate change through the state MVP program. We've done some public outreach. I've emailed stakeholders. We're still looking for more public outreach. We're looking at the root causes of climate change. As I said, we're going to do some mapping. We have some maps. We're going to do some more mapping on the impacts, how it impacts the transportation system. And we need to develop some strategies to reduce the impacts of climate change. So what is climate change? Real briefly, weather has to do with the day-to-day atmospheric changes like temperature, humidity, precipitation, etc. Climate is the weather of a specific place that's averaged over a period of time, often 30 years. So I think it's important to note that climate change is due to increases in global temperature, but that's a result of greenhouse gas emissions and atmospheric pollution. And specifically, they're targeting carbon pollution as a cause of global warming and climate change. And this graph shows two averages of temperature of a specific place. And you can see the bell curve on the left shows an average temperature with the extreme weather, extreme cold to the left, extreme hot to the right. And what happens over a period of time as global warming increases, the average temperature changes and it gets warmer. So that impacts the weather. So you have more hot weather and more record hot weather and extreme weather events. And that's how climate change sort of incrementally, it changes over time. And this happens over decades and hundreds of years. So the federal, I'm not going to go over all the response to climate change, but just try to highlight the important responses from the federal government. Executive order in 2013, they required federal agencies to engage in partnerships at all levels of government to do something what they call adaptive learning, which is adapt to the, try to develop and learn techniques and methodologies to adapt to climate change and to support state and local governments as state and local governments prepare for resiliency. So the Federal Highway Administration, they're focusing on what they call transportation systems management and operations and maintenance. And that has to do, of course, with the transportation infrastructure, with roadways as well as transit and railroad and ports. They're looking at loss of alternative routes, loss of situational awareness due to power losses and communication losses. Also, they're looking at the ability to evacuate or shelter in place, loss of service life, such as maintenance of roads and deterioration of roads, safety, how it impacts, how climate change impacts safety, and also, which is very important, the loss of economic productivity, because reduced mobility impacts the ability to move goods and the ability to provide services, and that's a big hit on the economy. The state response to climate change, I'm not going to go over every single one of them, but I think the important ones are in 2008, the Global Warming Solutions Act, which sort of promulgated other executive orders and some plans. There's the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. So the Global Warming Solution Act, which was 2008, required greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. And in the beginning, it was to 2020, but those goals were reset. In fact, in December 2020, the Secretary of Executive Office of Environment and Energy set the greenhouse gas limit to 45% below the 1990 level for the year 2030. So the GWSA required greenhouse gas emission reporting. They established baseline assessment as 1990 because that's the year of the Kyoto Protocol. They required modeling, greenhouse gas modeling for the future. They established the target emission reductions, which I just talked about. And they also established advisory committees, two advisory committees. And what's important is they allowed the use of market-based compliance mechanisms, which is similar to the regional greenhouse gas initiatives. It's a cap and trade system. So what happens is the total amount of carbon dioxide that can be released from vehicles is capped. And the fuel suppliers, transportation fuel suppliers, buy allowances on the market, and they can be bought and traded in the market. And any money that the states will get money from these sales so that they can take that money and then reinvest it in projects that can reduce emissions. from transportation. That's expected to incentivize development of fuel efficient technologies also, besides capping the use of greenhouse gas fuels and emissions. It's also expected to incentivize new fuel efficient technologies. And there are 12 states and Northeast states and Mid-Atlantic states that are involved. Thus far, memorandum of understanding has been signed by Massachusetts, Washington, DC, and Rhode Island. The other 10 states that have not yet signed. So the GWSA did have there was a bill in the state legislature that passed the state legislature, but was not approved by the governor. He had his reasons because the economy, he felt there was going to be an impact on the economy and housing. And we do have the letter that the governor sent out why he didn't approve. However, the update, he still very approve. He still does approve of update of the GWSA, except for some changes. The governor's office did have a letter. They did have a letter explaining what they would like to see in the new legislation, which is expected to be reintroduced. So moving on to OCPC's response. Just summarize what we did in 2011. We looked at the OCPC climate change, roadway drainage and runoff study, looked at watersheds in the region. We had a discussion of impervious area in the region, stormwater mapping, and the effects of a March 2010 storm event, which was in the year 2010, there was a week of storms that were back to back that caused a lot of flooding, not just in Brockton, but in our area. It was regional drainage analysis, a discussion of stormwater regulation, and some strategies to mitigate stormwater impacts, including low impact development practices. So this is from our 2011 study. The map just shows the watersheds in the OCPC region. Mostly we're in the Taunton watershed. However, we touch on surrounding watersheds also. And these pictures show the impacts of that flooding from 2010. This road on the top right is Bridge Street in Bridgewater. And you can see how the flooding undermined the road and the top, it undermined the base of the road, and the road basically collapsed. And the picture below is the same road, same stretch of road that was improved and fixed. The picture on the left is the Salisbury Brook in Brockton near Pleasant Street. You can see that it's overflowed into backyards. That's that March 2010 storm event. And the picture on the right is low impact development, which uses, it simulates the natural hydrologic cycle so that water can go back into the ground, can percolate into the ground rather than collect because of impervious surfaces and create flooding events. So if you have a lot of these types of developments, you can help the water percolate naturally into the groundwater. Our other study was in 2010. Again, it talked about flooding in specific places. This study that we did in 2010 talked about sea level rise in Plymouth, and also extreme weather impacts and air quality and health impacts. And again, there were some improvements from the study, improving storm drainage and improving dams in the region, as well as, again, low impact development recommendations. This slide just talks a little bit about the Massachusetts Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, the MVP program. As I said before, 15 of our communities have participated in this program. And this helps the communities identify those hazards that are related to climate change, try to understand how the communities are impacted, identify the potential vulnerabilities, and also try to identify actions and priorities that the towns can take. And this table shows the towns and the status of where they are in this process. Once the town does go through the MVP planning process, and they can get actually MVP action grants to help implement the recommendations from the MVP process. The next slides are just a summary of all the town's MVP. So I'm just going to skip through for the sake of time. We have Abington and Avon, Bridgewater, Brockton, Duxbury, Easton, Kingston, Plimpton, Plymouth, and just a couple more maps before I end. This map here shows the hurricane. This is from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and it shows what the surge inundation from hurricanes. And these on the right here, this category 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the light green and the green are category 1 and 2. Massachusetts has, from a historic standpoint, experienced 2 hurricanes that were in category 3, 1938 and 1954 Hurricane Carol. All of our other hurricanes have been category 1 and category 2. The green, the dark green, and the light green. But you can see in Pembroke, just north of Pembroke in Norwood, the impact on Route 3, the hurricane inundation, and also in Marshfield and Duxbury, right at the line on Route 3, and some of the local roads would be flooded out. I'm sorry, Route 3A would be flooded out. That's just a category 1 and category 2. This is the same map, except it's a little farther south. And it shows, again, it shows Duxbury, the local roads due to category 1 and category 2. And Kingston, Route 3 would be pinched off in Kingston, as well as Route 106. And Kingston Center and Main Street with category 1 and category 2 hurricanes. This map and the next couple of maps show the FEMA National Flood Hazard Layer. These are 100-year, mostly 100-year storms. There's 500-year storms too, but the light green and the blue and the hatch marks, the A's, are mostly 100-year zones. And I like this map because it has it shows the passenger rail and the impacts of a 100-year storm on the passenger rail, again in Kingston Center, and it would affect the Kingston line and also up through Hanson and Whitman. You see some impacts on the passenger rail, and the Marlboro line, Lakeville line, right at the Bridgewater Marlboro line would be impacts down there and up through Bridgewater and East Bridgewater. This is the same map except showing some highway impacts of the 100-year storm, and it's kind of hard to see, but Route 24 would be impacted in the 100-year storms in Avon and Stoughton, and some other of our secondary roads like Route 123 and Abington and Brockton. So the Massachusetts, the state has released two studies. One is the roadmap to 2050, the decarbonization plan, which is online, and that was released in January 2021, if people want to look at that. And the clean energy and climate plan, which the state is actually looking for public comments until February 22nd. And real quick, this is our last slide. These are the strategies that the Mass Decarbonization Roadmap has to reach, to decarbonize, to reach their goals for zero carbon. Cars and trucks. In transportation, they're looking at electric cars and hydrogen powered vehicles, healthy public transit system, more biking and sidewalks and transit oriented development. Buildings, they're looking at high performance heat pumps and energy saving methods for buildings and more energy efficient buildings. Energy supply, looking to transition to wind and solar power, and more diverse mix of energy resources. Non-energy, they're looking at more composting and agricultural, looking at ways to reduce emissions in the agricultural industry. And the last one is land use and better forest management. All these strategies are meant to get to our goals in 2050 for decarbonization. So our next step for the OCPC climate change, transportation, public outreach, we need to hear more from our stakeholders, from our towns. I have heard a lot of the towns have gotten back to me when I sent out emails and inquiries. We're going to schedule a public outreach meeting so that we can reach more people in OCPC region. We're going to develop some recommendations, a draft report for stakeholders to review, and our final report is September 2021. So if there are any questions and comments, I'll be happy to take them.
Ray, one of the policies at the state level I find contradictory to this initiative is the inspection fees. If you have a electric vehicle, you pay the same state inspection fee, but yet the largest part of it is the emissions part of the test, and it's irrelevant for electric vehicles. I mean, totally electric, not hybrids. And I think that that's kind of contradictory to the state's policy on encouraging these vehicles. And in other parts of the country, electric vehicles are allowed as a matter of right, regardless of the number of individuals in the vehicle in the high occupancy vehicle lanes. And I think both of those should be revisited because they do contradict the state policy on vehicles.
Yeah, that's a good point. I wasn't even aware that Massachusetts has that for electric vehicles.
I'm wondering, Ray, will this PowerPoint be on the OCPC website?
Yes, we can put it on there. Yep.
Could you? Because I think that was a lot to digest.
Yep.
A lot of information. And maybe if the members wanted to come back at some point, at some meeting to maybe, if they have some questions, and we could reschedule that on an agenda.
Sure.
Okay, that'd be great. Do we have additional questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much, Ray.
You're welcome.
And we'll review that information online and probably get back to you with more questions.
Okay, yep.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Joe, for bringing that up. That's important.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm going to move on to item 7C, which is Shared Winter Streets and Open Spaces Grant Program, the overview and the application process. And that would go back to Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to let you know about the Winter Shared Streets and Spaces program. It was really it's really the summer Shared Streets and Shared Spaces program that was continued on to winter in order to continue the facilitation of transforming public spaces, and particular spaces that are not traditionally used for pedestrians and bicyclists and commerce, to be transitioned into those purposes. And so the program started back in July, really June of 2020, with awards going out in July, and a couple of communities in our region had benefited from them, along with the Brockton Area Transit Authority too, during the winter Shared Streets program. But the program is coming to an end soon. The last application date will be February 26th, with notifications going out in March 26th that require all projects to be in the ground and completed by May. So some of the things that you could apply in order to get funding for, which could be as little as $5,000 to about $300,000, is things like expanding sidewalks, upgrading their accessibility, repurposing street space. So for example, like a lane of traffic or a parking space that's on the street, into an area where people can walk or bike or commerce to put out chairs and tables, especially during warmer months. Some businesses have transitioned to covered spaces in those areas. Converting streets to exclusively pedestrian, bicycle, and commerce uses, as well as additional safety measures to protect those vulnerable users. Things that were allowed in winter streets that were not in the summer portion were, like, for example, heaters and in spaces that would be for business but allowed to be visited by members of the public. That was something that was not allowed during the first initial launch of the program, which was just strictly public realm. But during the winter, they allowed for private companies to work with the town, for example, like a restaurant, to develop outdoor dining, but it had to be open to the public to use. So public could go in there and sit down and not necessarily be buying food or anything like that.
Sure.
So some of the ineligible things were, like, for example, exclusively getting money for businesses to put outdoor dining that no one else in the public could use, and other private spaces to try to get money for that type of programming. In your packet, there is frequently asked questions about Shared Winter Streets and Spaces grant program. I encourage anyone that has a desire to apply soon. There's been a number of communities that have gotten multiple awards because just their willingness to apply, and then a lack of applicants in the past. And then we'll see if it comes back this summer. I've asked around to see if there's the potential for the program to be relaunched for the summer, and there's been no commitment yet, so we'll see how that goes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Paul. So just wanted to make a comment and ask you a question. If a restaurant wanted to set up outdoor dining, you mentioned heaters. I see some restaurants that have those igloos out there. In some of, Patriot Place, they have a lot of them over there. That would be allowed if there was an area in which the public could sit there and not necessarily buy food or a meal. Is that what you're saying?
It has to be open to general public use. You can't just exclusively have the space for paying diners or that, because then that makes it exclusively private, and that's
Alrighty.
not allowed in the program. So for example, heaters was not something that they allowed at the beginning, but they allowed towards the end.
Okay.
And so those heating elements were allowed to be purchased through the program, being that the business and the municipality were partnering, but they had to be set up in a way that you and I, who may not be, visiting the restaurant, could still enjoy the heat or that space that was being used for commerce, even though we may not be, making any sales or purchasing anything from that.
Okay, understand. All right. I thought that's what you said. I just wanted to check. Any additional questions?
Yes, Paul,
Joe?
question on in those communities that got the awards, did they make provisions for municipal maintenance of those spaces?
Maintenance was not included in that. It was just the
So-
setting up of the thing. So
Who, in your experience, who maintained those spaces?
they were usually the towns or a partnership with the businesses.
And were there written agreements, I mean, just to your knowledge, written agreements between the businesses to, quote, wipe down the tables and pick up the trash and that type of thing?
From my knowledge, I don't know of any written agreements. Some of those are just, just done by regular DPW, municipal street cleaning and stuff like that, as I understand. And kind of cleaning the tables, especially if they're for business use. So those were covered under the COVID regulations. But no hard, fast agreements that I'm aware of.
Thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome, sir.
Any additional questions? Thank you so much, Paul. We're going to move
you,
forward to item 8 under other business. A would be community local technical assistance studies, and that would be Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just have a couple things to report on. So we did receive a new request from the town of Stoughton to do a traffic study and speed zoning analysis for Turnpike Street. Much of Turnpike Street through the town of Stoughton doesn't have any existing speed regulations, which makes it difficult for the police department to enforce speed. I mean, there is prima facie speed limits, but prima facie speed is traditionally difficult for police departments to enforce, as you can't use radar. So the town has asked us to do a study there. So we'll be doing traffic counts on several spots along the roadway and working with the town and MassDOT to come up with appropriate speed zoning for that roadway. And the town will have the option, since there is no existing speed regulations, to zone it traditionally, which is usually based on the 85th percentile speed and the other factors as well, crash history over the last 3 years and number of driveways, that sort of thing. Or since it doesn't have an existing speed regulation, the town could actually adopt into Chapter 90, Section 17C, which is the Municipal Modernization Act. The town could actually create a quote unquote safety speed zone along that roadway of 25 miles per hour, as many communities have done. So that would be an option to the town as well. But we'll get to that point after we do the data collection. And the one other item that I have to report on, also speed zoning related, in Plymouth, Clark Road and Beaver Dam Road, mostly Clark Road. The town has been looking to lower an existing speed limit on that roadway, which traditionally has been a little challenging, given state statutes. But we're working with the town and to MassDOT, and shout out to MassDOT. They've been very helpful in providing a lot of guidance. So this project is moving along, and regardless if the end result is to lower the speed limit or if it stays the same, it's been a great process so far, collaborative process between OCPC, the town of Plymouth, and MassDOT. So it's been great, and we're very appreciative of our MassDOT partners. And with that, I'll open it up to if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate
Madam
it.
Chair.
Moving on to item 8B, which is staff reviews on ENFs, EIRs, and MPCs, and that would be Kyle.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome.
So there's just one item this month. It's an EIR, Environmental Impact Report, and that's for the proposed Duxbury Beach nature-based storm damage protection project in Duxbury. And comments for that EIR are due by February 22nd. And you can ask for copies of this document from Beth Gurney, and I provided her email address in the staff report.
Any questions on that? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move forward to item 8C, regional concerns and local community transportation issues. And I want to open that up for any comments or questions.
I have one, Madam Chair. So
Okay.
just putting it out there. So I'm always looking for guest speakers to come to this committee, and so if there are any topics that you think the committee would be interested in, and you'd like me to reach out to somebody, whether it's from MassDOT or whoever, to talk on a particular subject, just always feel free to drop me an email and bring it up, and I can see if I can work that out and arrange that for a guest speaker on any particular topic that you think would be beneficial to this committee.
Bill, I had a question I meant to ask you at the beginning of the meeting. The recent bill that was passed on reform, I'm wondering, I think it was 5505, but I'm not positive. Would there be any sort of outline or review of that bill for the members that you could email to us?
Yeah, I can look into that. I'm not 100% familiar with that.
I mean, Mary Waldron did mention that she was looking into finding like an outline of review for towns, so that, because the bill is so comprehensive. So maybe if you could, I'm not sure if Mary's online. I didn't go. Okay, you are, Mary. So you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Is there any sort of like outline or review that we could all look at? I think it'd be really helpful to towns.
I thought I had shared that, but I can resend it.
That would be great.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, can I just ask something?
Sure.
Hey, Bill, we had a project, I'm on the Abington Planning Board, and we had a project withdrawn. It was going to be a self-storage facility at the corner of Shaw Ave and Bedford Street.
Right.
And one of the issues was curb cuts. And I think that's probably a common thing in our area is the issue of curb cuts on state roads.
Yes.
I just wondering if, Bill, if you could get somebody from MassDOT to, I think this would be general interest, like a tutorial on curb cuts, in the region on state roads, just to, bring us all up to speed on that subject. And it's not just for planning boards, but I think it would be a general interest thing.
Sure.
Just throwing that out.
Yeah, I can look into that.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other comments or questions? Well, thank you all for attending today. It was a great meeting, great presentations as always. And keep warm. Try not to do too much shoveling if it gets more snow. And take care. And thanks again. Motion to adjourn.
Motion
So
to
moved,
adjourn.
Dan Whitman.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.